Up tonight on the 6 p.m. newscast, historically of the 6th of December of Cameroon's democracy, 900 seats of regional councillors are up for grab for elections to be held in 68 divisional headquarters of the country. Some political party leaders and municipal councillors react on this edition of the news. Plus, we are bringing to you tensions which flare up as the Minister of Territorial Administration, Atanga, strikes hard in a press conference yesterday on opposition party CRM. And parts of Meme division and some municipalities in the littoral region are being swallowed in floods due to heavy rains. And this and many more will be yours on this edition of the news. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining this 6 p.m. newscast on Spectrum Television. I am Josephine Bindzi. As announced in the headlines, the Minister of Territorial Administration has warned Professor Maurice Kamto and allies that the state will not tolerate any move to disrupt the December 6 elections. Atanga sounded the call at a press briefing shortly after the convening of the Electoral College. Details with you, Peter and Sosie.
Addressing pressmen in Yaoundé Monday following the convocation of the Electoral College for the regional council elections, Atanga only fell short of calling out Professor Maurice Kamto of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement by name, who has not only called for the boycott of regional elections but has demanded nationwide protest to start September 22. The Minister of Territorial Administration has dished out a stern warning to the opposition politician and his allies, promising them that they will face the law should they attempt to disrupt the December 6 regional elections. To the interior boss, Kamto and other unscrupulous politicians are looking for cheap popularity and with a hidden agenda to destabilize state institutions. He recalled provisions of Section 114 of the Penal Code that punishes plotters of revolutions and the law of December 19, 1990, laying down regulations on public meetings and processions. Atanga lashed out at the Cameroon Renaissance Movement leader for claiming to defend Cameroonians without an elective mandate, stressing that Republican legitimacy can only be attained through the ballot box and not on social media or the streets.
And let's now talk eligibility. The elections of regional councillors is quite specific to conditions of eligibility. The terms have clearly been spelled out in the Electoral Code. Peter and Sosie took interest in this aspect and now reports.
Section 175 and 180 of the Electoral Code states that potential candidates for regional council elections and voters must be Cameroonians of either sex and aged 23 and above from the date of the election. They must be able to speak and write either English or French and show proof of effective residence of at least 6 months within the region concerned. On the issue of effective residence, Section 258 states that members of the Electoral College, comprising divisional representatives and traditional rulers, must reside in their region of origin. Administrative authorities will deliver certificates to this effect. Defense and security forces, regional administrative officials and employees, judicial and legal officers, civil servants and public officials taking cognizance of the finances and accounts of the regions concerned are not eligible to stand for regional council elections. Should you be voted in a position of incompatibility, you have up to a month to choose between your career or your elective seat. Failure to decide will attract the Minister of Decentralization and Local Development, who will invoke Section 254, subsection 3 of the Electoral Code to automatically strip you off the elective post.
And we are bringing to you reactions as Barrister Ashu Julius of the Cameroon's People Democratic Movement Party, who has expressed total satisfaction to the convening of the Electoral College by the President of the Republic. Opposition parties like the Popular Action have joined the Social Democratic Front to boycott the elections. Details with you, Oniladonet.
Some political actors have applauded the presidential decree signed on Monday, 7th September 2020, convening electors for the election of regional councillors to take place in headquarters of all divisions come Sunday, 6th December 2020.
I am very, very satisfied and very happy that the head of state has decided to terminate the federalism process that we've been waiting for. We should understand that this process started actually in 2018 with the electoral election. The following year, there was the presidential elections that went on smoothly, and this year there was the legislative and municipal elections that went on smoothly. The measures have been put in place, but you see, it is difficult for them to operate or work without there being the regional council, which is the supreme council in the supreme organ, both the executive and legislative of each region. So it is time to put that organ in place so they can easily now manage the regions as expected by our constitution.
Barrister Achu further reiterates that boycotting the elections doesn't guarantee an end to the ongoing crisis in the northwest and southwest regions. However, holding elections is essential as it will help foster the decentralization plan.
These elections are going to be done at the regional headquarters, which means the electorate, which are going to be councillors, are going to move to the regional headquarters for elections to go on. So while we're not likely, there will be a lot of security, and it will be easy to contain any problem because they are in one area.
On the other hand, opposition parties like the Popular Action Party has kicked against the elections, terming it as adding more fuel to an already existing fire.
The Popular Action Party is not endorsing any elections in Cameroon at this particular time, because we think that elections is like putting fuel to an existing fire. We have seen the casualties and negative effects that the 2018 presidential election caused to Cameroonians, especially to Cameroonians of the northwest and southwest. That is our bastion of support. That is where the Popular Action Party is well known. And we cannot pretend that everything is normal there. Many people are still in the bushes. What elections? Which councillors? They are simply pushing through their agenda and they don't care about the Cameroonian people.
With the ongoing socio-political crisis, holding an election won't yield any fruit.
If the elections were to solve the problem of Cameroon, it would not be in 2020. Why is it that the presidential election is unable to establish a new social order in Cameroon? The legislative elections, more violence escalates every day. Look at the situation in Bamenda. Traders there are unable to go out. People there are sleeping in their houses as I'm speaking to you right now. A political actor in that place cannot conduct this type of interview I'm conducting. And you say people are happy about the country, about the government? Let's stop telling ourselves lies. This government has lost credibility long time ago. Because if they say the elections is for decentralization, it's not in 2020 that decentralization that was meant to be implemented as far back as 1996 will be implemented in 2020 when the government is already defunct. It's not proper. We are in the 21st century. All the measures that have been taken by the government concerning the Anglophone crisis, we have not seen any yielding any concrete fruits in the ground. If they were yielding fruits, the violence would not be at the level where it is today. If they were yielding fruits, we would not be here talking about reconstruction and whatsoever. So you discover that everything they are doing is not yielding any fruit, which means it is not the 6th December elections that is going to bring us something different. Therefore, we have to mobilize, stay focused, be non-violent, coordinate ourselves, and take back our country.
The Social Democratic Front won't be going in for the elections.
And following messages of boycott of the regional elections by SDF and the Cameroon Renaissance Movement opposition leaders for December 6, 2020, the Secretary of Communications for the ruling party CPDM in a 4-page document in response to this ultimatum. Christel Asexwele with details.
Leaders of the opposition parties, the Cameroon Renaissance Movement and the Social Democratic Front, Maurice Kamto and Ejan Frundi, are categorically clear that they will not take part in the upcoming regional elections slated for December 6, 2020 if the electoral code reforms are absent and if the tensions plaguing the two Anglophone restive regions of the country are not resolved. An ultimatum considered as caricatural by the Professor Famdongo. In a 4-page document titled Elections of December 6, 2020, the absenters will have themselves to blame, signed Monday, September 7, 2020 by the Communications Secretary of the CPDM, Jack Famdongo, he states that the Cameroon People's Democratic Movement Party is ready and going for the elections in full force. As for the boycott of the SDF party, he goes back memory lane reminding the party leader in his document that in 1991, the SDF party leader Nijan Frunzi refused to take part in the ever-first legislative pluralistic elections. And a year later, he misses out a standway to the presidential palace of Itudi. And for their stand of not taking part in this very first upcoming regional elections, the professor states that Nijan Frunzi prefers political fiction. He says he was the second strongest political party in Cameroon, but he keeps losing ground. He further states that the ostrich politics practiced by this party is a dead one, as he qualifies the Cameroon Renaissance movement and the Social Democratic Front boycott as anti-democratic or insurrectional. However, despite it all, he says, the regional elections will definitely take place on December 6, 2020, and all the absentees will have themselves to blame. Thus concludes the member of the political bureau of the ruling party.
Our newsroom went to the streets and found out the views of Cameroonians in relation to the upcoming regional elections, and this is what they had to say.
Now, only say the system where country it did it. I don't believe say people they go out for do any election for this country again. So it the only thing being I say make the organized country make there for where any man go for go in for election. So they no go just begin wake up one day they just talk say election day. People they never know the reason of going in for election. They get for sensitize them very well, and then they organize things them very well for where if any man they go in for election, they will be very happy.
I don't think so. We needed to solve this crisis before calling up these elections. And I think this is a problem that has stayed for long, which has really caused many problems in our country.
That are coming up on the seat will not change what has always been happening. Elections are good because we make our choices during elections. And when it comes, if our choices end up not being what we want, it's no problem. But as the elections are coming, there's no problem with elections. Ever since I was born, nothing has changed during election. So it's not now that I'm going to be moved because election is going to move people. It's good. Election is a good thing. If we don't vote, we will not get our own good leaders as we want them to be. So as of now, it's good. It's good. So when election comes, we will follow and vote because it's election, right?
The regional election in the morning, but now it has to do with people in a particular region, and we had to vote. Probably as the election is concerned, we have to put our massive collaboration so that it goes on well.
Over to the southwest region, some localities in the Meme division have been swallowed by heavy rains. Ekombe Bonji in the Bonges subdivision, cassava farms and Malabo quarters in the Kombo 1 division. Details with Catherine Kone.
Inhabitants of Cassava Farm, Malabo Quarter and Cameroon Street in Kumba, chief town of Meme Division Southwest region, woke up early morning with the entire neighborhood flooded after a heavy downpour.
Well, this is the 4th year staying in this area. So we used to experience this havoc, but not as so grievous as it is now. When rain used to fall, there will be float, but not too much like this. But since people have been throwing dirt inside the water here, the place is no more deep. And when rain comes like this, the float will come up right at the house level.
Although no loss of human life has been recorded, one cannot rule out numerous material damage as far as household properties and livestock are concerned.
So I've incurred losses here. You see that sugarcane farm there, everything inside the water. I planted yams there. Everything has been swept away in bags. There in bags. Everything has been swept away. And I've incurred a lot of losses because of this flood here. Why? Just mainly because when you look at behind me here, you see that there's a lot of palm stain that the water has brought. All this one causes the water not to go and to be floating.
So are you saying that it's negligence of the council?
Negligence of the council, because they're supposed to put people to protect them from throwing dirt into the water. And this has caused this damage here. If you look, for example, the other area there.
The inhabitants are urging the government to look into the drainage system, which they say is the main cause of the flood.
At the tribal talk of council, say me the tribal see how caterpillar fit try to make this drainage, make water deep go inside, so that if in case when that water won't come, it no go fit come up, because it be shallow. The water, the ground where they throw them, the way they throw them, it will make the place for water for pass, it pass. That way the water now the flow on top. Direction. Yes. Simply way and say see how water enter. Right for window. If water fit climbs to reach for the window level.
The heavy downpour took the inhabitants by storm, causing nearby streams to overflow their banks. It equally paralyzed circulation as these affected areas were completely cut off from the rest of the town.
And bringing you back to the littoral region, constant rainfall in Douala stirs up fear in the hearts of inhabitants living in areas of possible floods, especially at the Valley Besenge neighborhoods in the Douala 1 municipality. Residents have taken measures and call on government to come to their aid. Details with Oni Ladonet.
The fear of waking up to a flooded house preoccupies the minds of inhabitants at the Besenge neighborhood in the Douala 1 municipality this raining season. We are really scared because when it rains just a little, there's flood. We are really scared. If it rains like it did the last time, the flood might be even worse. With the effect of August 21 rains still fresh in their memory, the population calls on government to properly fix their drainage system. The quarter head or government have to see how to arrange the drainages. From this side, it's okay, but at the other end of Valley Besenge, they have different issues. The people that way are suffering.
C'est le gouvernement qui doit s'en charger, notamment la communauté urbaine de Douala, parce que
it's the government that can solve this problem of flow, because the drainages had to be fixed a long time ago, but they kept postponing it, and the population gets to suffer the consequences.
Donc, cela nous cause beaucoup de dégâts.
Inhabitants, on their part, are working on building a wall around the end of the gutters so as to help prevent water from entering their houses.
Traders at the New Daido and Sandaga markets decry hardship imposed on them by heavy rains in Douala. Speaking to Catherine Kone, they say sales have drastically dropped since the rains began.
Heavy rains in the economic city of Cameroon, Douala, has made life miserable to traders at the New Daido market and those at the Sandaga market. The intensity of the rain, they say, have brought an untold suffering to their hustle.
This time of rain, we have so many problems, difficulties to say in this market, because there is no way to come out, to come and make activity. So we are trying our best. In the morning, we wake up in the morning. The rain is falling, but we continue with the rain. There is no customer, but we try to save the others who came and meet us in the market. So the activity is very difficult now.
Vous-même, vous voyez, il y a la pluie partout. We are unable to sell. There is rain. These are my goods, and since morning, I am unable to sell it back. And in order for them to cope with the rains, the traders have adopted different methods in dealing with the rains.
In rainy season, I use umbrella and plastic paper to protect my cargo. Yes.
This has also caused a decline in their business activities.
It's difficult to get the tomato to sell because the tomato is very dear. We sell now 500 francs, 3 places, 1,000 a place. The basket is still 13,500.
There is a slowdown, but we are dealing with what we can. They, however, look forward to the end of the rains, which might bring some sunshine in their business.
Activities are picking up steam ahead of the new school year. Parents are in the market trying to buy one or two things for their children. But as our reporter Crystal Asexuele tells us, things are very, very difficult for some of them.
The COVID-19 health crisis achieved the challenge of disrupting the previous school year and may still disturb this upcoming school year. After schools were abruptly interrupted during the 2019-2020 school year, this virus continues to dictate its laws by obstructing the usual sources of parents' income as far as the preparations for the upcoming school resumptions are concerned.
La rentrée scolaire est déjà là, c'est déjà devant tous les parents comme nous. Ce n'est pas aujourd'hui qu'on prépare cette rentrée.
The back to school is already here for parents like us. It's not today we start preparing. For me, I have been preparing for the school year a long time ago. I engage in a little savings in my meeting groups. So I am awaiting for the savings committee to share the money and start my children's registration. These days, banks don't give out school loans anymore due to the COVID-19 health crisis, which has an adverse effect on most activities. Conscious parents shouldn't wait for the last day to start preparing for their children's back to school. With loans inaccessible at some financial institutions, activities paralyzed, parents are forced to look out at group savings and other associative movements.
Nous ne sommes pas habitués aux microfinances ou à certaines banques dans le pays.
We are not used to going to microfinance or banks for loans. We have our little meetings where we do daily savings. That's how we prepare for the back to school. We don't wait on the last minute.
National page. Next on U.S. elections calendar, September 29 for the first in a series of debates between President Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. Details with the VOA.
This election will decide whether we save the American dream or whether we allow a socialist agenda to demolish our cherished destiny.
Now that the conventions have ended with Republican President Donald Trump and his Democratic Party rival, former Vice President Joe Biden, making their opening arguments.
This is a life-changing election. This will determine what America is going to look like for a long, long time.
Both candidates have gotten onto the campaign trail, honing their messages to voters in key states ahead of their first face-to-face debate on September 29th.
I think that we can expect to see a rowdy debate between the two presidential candidates.
Jennifer Murcia is a communications professor at Texas A&M University. She says both Biden and Trump are fighters.
And he isn't shy to do that, to mock people or to bully them during a debate. He did that in 2016. And with Joe Biden, what we've seen from him, he sort of has a longer history of doing debates in politics. And what we've seen from him is that he's very willing to stand his ground. We saw in 2012 that his vice presidential debate was similarly, I think, to Trump in style, in that he sort of mocked his opposition a little bit.
Presidential debates have largely kept to a format of the candidates answering questions from a moderator.
It is actually informative to see both candidates in contrast to one another. So to hear how they speak, the tone they use, but also to hear about their policies. It allows them to directly accuse one another of doing things, and it also allows them to make rebuttals so that they can defend themselves.
John Koch is the debate director at Vanderbilt University. He says there needs to be an evolution beyond what he calls press conference sound bites.
The debate would start with, here's the issue or the situation. You have 30 minutes or whatever it is to meet with your consultants and advisors, and then we want you to come back with a position, explain your position, and then we'll have a debate about how you arrived at that decision, and then the quality of those decisions.
Whether viewership this year tops the estimated 84 million Americans who watched the first debate in 2016, it is questionable how many voters it will sway.
A lot of the research on presidential debates have shown that it kind of lets people identify with the candidate that they kind of already identify with. It just kind of lets them see who shares their positions, right? There's not a lot of evidence per se that it changes, presidential debates change minds.
I really think that, for these debates to have any kind of effect like they should, that the audience itself has a responsibility to listen with an open mind.
According to Pew Research, 10% of 2016 voters said they decided their vote during or just after the debates. Steve Reddish, VOA News, Washington.
And that was how we saw it on tonight's newscast. Thanks for watching the 6 p.m. news. And stay tuned for the news in the French language, which comes up at 8 p.m. with Orion Duncan. From us, it's good night.